Rock that body, Black-Eyed Peas, right here on Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. A lot of good stuff been going on in my world. Going to try to see if I can get to it in one of these videos here coming out shortly. Acting as if we were awake. Wanted to give some good examples. Again, I've been reading some great stuff. Had some free time finally to be able to catch up on reading for that matter. And just had some really good ideas for shows. So wrote down a bunch of notes and all this great stuff. Earmarked the books and all these places. So some great examples that came out to me of how to kind of help us gauge where we're at on this whole awakening process, and some examples of hopefully, help you understand conceptually anyways, kind of where we're heading when it comes to the mindset changes. Now, I want to quickly preface that a lot of these mindset changes, when you change your mind about something, believe it or not, now, some of you know this, I hope. Some of you may not know this so much or haven't paid attention per se, but when you have a major belief, and you change your mind and open that belief up to something else, your entire world really metamorphoses at that point, changes. It changes forever. Now it expands a hair. It's just, you'll see it in other places that you would think would be totally unrelated to this revelation. But for some reason, now that you've understood that, well, now you're ready to kind of play with this idea, because once you get that, you're going to expand one more degree. And it's interesting how that expansion tends to happen. So try really hard not to look at each individual thing and compare it to the whole and go, or compare it like this section of my life needs. No, it might just be one little thing. It might be one little string that needs to be cut and everything will be fine. It might just be one thing, and then it might open up a whole slew of other stuff. It is very related in a way that might be very hard to see, but a lot of times as we expand ourselves, you will notice your world starts to expand. Your possibilities expand. The things that you've been trying to manifest start happening quicker. The things start happening with larger payouts, if you will, or larger than you realize. Like, I was just trying to have dinner with her, and then all of a sudden it turned into this wonderful function where you're at a really fine restaurant. Someone else was paying for it. It was still a date. Like, it was a win-win-win-win-win, right? So you start to take something that you were trying to manifest and you manifest it, but so much bigger. These things happen as we expand. So one of the things that stops happening, for the most part, really does, when you awaken yourself significantly, is negative thoughts. Negative thoughts tend to go away. And the reason they do is because you realize truly what they are. When you are awake, you realize what negative thoughts are. And as soon as you catch yourself doing them, you change, you alter, you steer the boat in a different direction consciously, immediately, because you know exactly what these negative thoughts do. So you steer into, usually in my case, the opposite. Whatever I'm thinking that's bothering me, that's negative, I just do a straight 180. I don't get far enough downstream where I've got to do like Hicks has talked about. Maybe you do. And then that's fine if you do. You do it degree at a time, like that 18 scale thing or 28 scale, whatever the hell that scale. I always can't remember the number. There's too many freaking numbers and all these law of attraction things. So whatever the hell it is, you go degree by degree by degree. Like if you're feeling super crappy, then you just sort of go to barely crappy and then kind of crappy and then crappy. And then, right? So I'll use my terms because I like those a lot more than her fancy schmancy ones. But that's my point. Like you go from crappy to good. So then it's like you're at crappy and then it's like, well, I'm not really crappy, and then barely crappy and then hardly crappy and then not crappy. Hi. And then you're like, now you're becoming an optimist. You're like, oh, I am sort of barely kind of almost good. And then I'm kind of sort of good. And then I'm almost good, right? Move on up the scale. Use whatever terms you want, whatever words you want. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is steer ourselves from one negative thought to a positive thought. And as you steer your thoughts, your feelings tend to change. If you're thinking negative things, you will feel negative, period. I don't care. You can all argue me all the way you want. I don't care. If you think more positive thoughts, you will feel more positive, period. End of story. Sorry, I dare you. Test me, to prove me wrong. We control our thoughts. It's a very important thing. Also, you start to realize that we're going to love ourselves fully, just as we are. And we're also going to love everyone else fully, just as they are. Because really, you start seeing it as we're all interrelated. We're all interconnected. We're all kind of moving through this together. We're all together in this. And you realize that people sometimes do silly things. Sometimes they do stupid things. Sometimes, but it's relative to them, right? So say, for example, I've been really busy, like in my life, right? I live alone, right? There's not a whole lot going on. I don't have people to remind me of stuff like birthdays, for example. And I don't like Facebook. I don't go on Facebook. I hate Facebook. Occasionally I see the little things, but I don't even post there. Like, I just hate it. So anyway, again, one of those things where it's like, crap, I missed a birthday, right? It can happen, but it's like I'm busy. I'm thinking I'm always focused on other stuff. And I know it should be the most important thing in the world. Everyone else outside there that's got birthdays and right? I know, but I guess a lot of us are trying to live our own lives too, right? So again, you start to give people credit, if you will, or start to give them understanding for the things that they've failed on because for the most part, they're doing their best. And for the most part, they're pretty darn cool. Yeah, they made a mistake. Yeah, they pissed me off. Yeah, they did something that felt like it stabbed me in the back. Whatever the case was, sometimes we just start to realize that we're all sort of traveling through this experience together. And it's a really powerful revelation, really, because it's when you start to realize, when you look at your own life and you're like, man, I've made a lot of mistakes. And if I'm going to blame others for making mistakes, it's that whole people who live in glass houses should not throw stones, right? For those who've sinned, I can't even properly do the Christian one. There's a version of that, right? Cast the first stone, whatever it is, right? For those of you that are without sin, cast the first stone. It's that same concept. All of us have jacked up, messed up, screwed up in significant ways too. So maybe we didn't ever rob somebody, but we, cheated somebody over here and somehow did better off because of it. That's kind of like robbing. You didn't necessarily break into their house, but it's similar. You took from them without their knowing in an unfair kind of way, maybe. Again, not passing judgment, because that's, I think, one of the bigger differences when you start to waken up is the concept of judgment. That actually hit me just accidentally. It's pretty sweet. And I got all this crazy horn honking outside. It's pretty rad. Also, the need to forgive. This is an interesting one because I do talk about forgiveness, and I'm going to because I think from a non-awakened standpoint, because a lot of my audience is wakening, right? So depending on where you're at in this scale of things, if you're in that I'm not quite awakened phase, forgiveness, the concept of it, I think is good. Forgiving yourself, of course, is what I typically talk about, is great. Forgiving others is far less important in my mind than it is forgiving yourself, maybe for allowing them to upset you, however you want to phrase that. But, forgiveness, I think there's something to be said for it. But truly, and this is very true, when you awaken, actually, forgiveness gets replaced with understanding. It's kind of what I was talking about with the original point, but understanding that people are trying their best. People are moving through life the best they can. And for us to go all judgmental on them, get all pissed and hold things against them, man, that's how many of you seriously have not made mistakes yourself? So again, from an awakened standpoint, we realize, man, we're just all fumbling through life. We're doing the best we can. So it's really hard to get too overly upset with other people for doing these same things. Another one that's actually kind of crazy, and this is something that ties back in. I was just visiting my mom. My mom's stage 4 right now, and she's doing good. She's got time. She's got definite time, and I think it's up to her how long, to a large extent. But the concept of death is something we were talking about, and she was asking me some questions, and we come from an interestingly open family. She's had some experiences too, and certainly when her mom and dad passed, she had some experiences, and so her and I have kind of been, talking about things because she's going to be passing through that transition a lot sooner, maybe, than I am, hopefully. Frankly, I hope I got more time. We'll see. But the concept of mourning death is something that goes away. Death doesn't happen anymore. Death isn't necessarily, it's not the end of anything. What it is truly a transition. It is where you're going from this concept, this life body, this physical shell, to your light body, but it's like instant. So there's no loss of remembering or consciousness or anything. It's instant. It's instant. It's like the body falls away and you're like, why do I feel lighter all of a sudden? Wow, it's really weird. And you're like, oh, what's that? Oh my God, that's me. Right? Like, you don't know. You just shed your body somehow and don't realize it. You just, hey, this is cool. And then maybe you start to see people you know. So the concept of mourning death is silly because we're all going there. We can still talk to these people when they are over there. It's just a veil. It's a dimensional veil at the very least. And we realize that is as much a transition in and out of life. It's just part of this whole physical reality that we find ourselves in. We were birthed We went through the same process and then we reverse it to go back. We're just going home. Finally. It's really, truly almost something to be rejoiced. In fact, it should almost be scarier when people are born because of all the wonderful experiences we get to have during life that so many of us are like, why does it suck? Well, that's part of growing. So, I don't know. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have. That's the facts of life for those of you that grew up in the 80s. Anyway, everything is a vibration. This is super important to keep in mind as well. I can't believe I did the facts of life thing. It's whatever. Damn. It happens. You never know. Everything is vibration. We begin to concern ourselves a little bit more with what's being pulled into us. Let's put it that way, because I think it counts for what we're watching on TV, what movies we're seeing, maybe what video games we play, maybe what activities, maybe what sports, maybe what thoughts we ourselves have. But we start to actually, or food, there we go. That was the one I was like, wow, I'm missing something major. What kind of food we actually ingest into ourselves. We start thinking about the vibration of what we are intaking, right? So if it's our information, maybe even on the internet, are we going to these sites that are and angry and hating everything, and this sucks, and oh my God, this, and the political things, oh my God, that, and everything you're reading and watching is negative? Or are you going to something that's maybe a little more, not necessarily positive maybe, but maybe a lot less heavily negative, like the sky is falling, we're all doomed and we're all going to die to, this sucked happened today, but this good thing happened today, but this sucky thing happened today, and this good thing happened today. A little more, hey, and the weather tomorrow, and right now traffic's okay. Hi, check it out on Channel 5, like whatever the heck they do. That is a much happier place to come from when you're ingesting information than the doom and gloom or the super negative. For those of you that are conspiracy people like me, kind of like the doom and gloom stuff is not benefiting you because so far every single prediction that's been given has been wrong. All of them, 100%. In fact, anybody that gives a prediction I would run from because nobody's been right yet, ever. Ever in the history of the planet has any one prediction about the end of the world been correct. Not once. Nope. They are 100% wrong, which is pretty amazing when you think about the statistics of something. To be 100% wrong? Just saying. That's all I'm talking about. So again, what we're talking about, what we're reading, what we're ingesting, and certainly the food. We're eating processed, nasty, crappy food, especially those of us in the United States. Some of this stuff is so horrific. It's got all sorts of chemicals in it to make it seem like it tastes delicious. But when you look at it, there's absolutely nothing in that that's good for a body. It's all made in a lab. It's all inorganic. It's all nasty versus some healthy produce, maybe mixed in with, I'm not saying don't eat meat, do eat meat. I'm not saying that. I'm not even trying to go down that path, but there's certainly many healthy ways to get protein in your diet again. But what are we eating? What are we ingesting? What kind of foods are going into our body? Are we eating a bag of Doritos a night? I don't know. Maybe it's time to, let's not get crazy and jump straight to a salad. That might be ridiculous. But maybe we find, I don't know, maybe make a sandwich, right? Maybe a turkey sandwich. I don't know. Somehow that's going to be as good. Put some sriracha on it if you want to make it like Doritos. I don't know. Something, right? But at least you're not eating that nasty processed stuff. Now you're just eating something that's not the best for you, but certainly better than Doritos. So it's a step in the right direction. It's kind of like that thing I was saying with the degrees. Less sucky versus more sucky. So again, trying to make these huge changes in our life, and we'll find that they make enormous differences in the way we perceive things, without a doubt. But certainly these are some of the things that you will start to experience and can start to look towards as what awakened people do. It's the only difference, really. Nothing significant changes per se, but then everything changes significantly. That's kind of weird, right? You get a small little adjustment in what happens to you, but it affects your life in a really cool, awesome, large way. And that you will see. But as this awakening process, these are some of the different thoughts that are going to occur to you. Going out with a great song by will.i.am, and it's featuring Britney Spears, which is very cool. It's called Scream and Shout. It's right here on Dan RadioStyle.
And let it all out, and scream and shout, and let it out.